Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
And welcome back to the show. This is StrataLife on CL 650, and today it's StrataLife. We're talking about living in a strata and all the things that you might have to deal with, especially if you're on a council. I'm sure somebody's turning up the radio now going, oh, I'm on the council. I should be listening to this. So joining us in studio is our regular Drew Grout from Key Pacific Property Management. We also, just in the last segment, heard from Albert Atfield, Project Manager of CanStar, and also Gordon Lai is here, Client Executive and Vice President of CMW Insurance. Now, this one is, the next in the mailbag is about insurance. It says, I'm a Strata Council member, and my Strata, I'm a Strata Council member, and I sit on some subcommittees. How am I protected under the Strata's insurance policy?
There's a couple of areas where there's coverage that will provide coverage for them. So usually in these cases, if you're on a council or subcommittees, what most people are talking about, they're concerned about possibly getting sued by a unit owner. Or a group of people saying that, decisions that they've made or not made has caused them some financial loss. So a leaky condo would be, a good example where they say, maybe we should have spent some money to get an envelope restoration or an engineer to look at whether, the envelopes, have any issues. And
if it was delayed and it ended up costing them more money.
Yes.
Right.
You might vote, say, let's not do that, right? Let's not put that in the budget. So things like that. So that would fall under a section under the directors and officers liability coverage. So in the event that, someone does bring a suit on, the strata liability D&O policy would respond to provide some defense for them, and then if any subsequent payment that's awarded, that will also be covered.
So do you ever have strata corporations come to you for insurance for the common property and the strata and not take this insurance, this special insurance, or is it something you provide as part of a basic package?
Yeah, we provide as a basic package, and I don't think I've ever seen one. Maybe I would say like 10 years ago, I would see policies out there. And these days, very odd cases where maybe a strata is coming off construction and the developer set up the insurance through a broker that's not familiar with this. So they just get the basic, property coverage and liability and not provided directors and officers. But these days, I have to say, absolutely for a council member, that's more important because we got something that came up that's basically been put in force now, the Civil Resolution Tribunal, which started somewhere around the summertime, and that enables people to go online and file complaints against strata corporations. That could be just basic things like not enforcing bylaws, or they feel that the AGM wasn't done on schedule, and basically the strata council could be found liable for that, right? So you need to have some directors and officer insurance, and at CMW, we also provide a product through a legal retainer coverage, which basically we set that up with the Clark Wilson.
So if you had a council that needed some advice from a lawyer, that's covered?
That's covered, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really important, that legal advice to sometimes, where people, there's discrepancies. So before lawsuits happen, usually what we'll find is that there's some dialogue. Most council members or a property manager would tell you, yeah, we know that there's some issues that has been brewing over a period of time, and so we're not surprised to see, a lawsuit come in. But what we find is that with some legal advice, sometimes that can be looked after, before that happens, right?
All right. So the next question says, I know our Strata's insurance has deductibles. Under what circumstances would I be responsible for some or all of these deductibles? How can I protect myself?
With regarding deductible assessment, that actually would be Drew's end, where it goes to the property manager, and someone like Drew would decide based on probably the bylaws and where the loss came from, who gets assessed the deductible. But regardless of that, I think what's most important for a unit owner is that they find some coverage for themselves. And how they do that is that they make sure they got some content insurance, and that in that personal content insurance package, it includes deductible assessment coverage. So one very important thing is, ask the strata, if you don't have it already, a summary of the strata insurance to see what deductibles are on there. and bring that to your broker.
For example, we have a carport, and we've had all this snow and ice, and maybe the carport roof failed. Maybe it didn't fall down, but it needs to be repaired, for example. So that's a common property, and then the deductible has to be paid from the strata itself, right? Yes. So that's pretty straightforward because that's part of common property, right? But what you're talking about is inside the building, something happens, and then, Drew, you go in and say, well, this is common property, this isn't, or how does it work?
Well, not quite. Drew doesn't go in and say. I don't think any property manager goes in and says. It's a decision that needs to be made by the Strata Council.
Right.
So the Act is kind of clear. It says that in the event of a claim, and if your bylaws state this too, if an owner is responsible for an incident that gives rise to the claim, turn on my dishwasher is a common thing. Turn on my dishwasher, go to a movie, come back, units flooded, affected people below or beside, whatever the case may be. $5,000 water deductible. Strata Corporation has to pay that. Then the Strata Council, on behalf of the corporation, will assess whether or not the owner was responsible for the incident. And if they are, then they can pursue that owner to recover that deductible through the courts. Now, what happens is before it even gets that far, many, if not most, strata owners these days have their own insurance, which protects them against that sort of chargeback.
That's what you were mentioning. Make sure the policy you have for your contents has a deductible for the greater building, right?
Correct.
That's right.
Okay.
So that if you're found responsible, your insurer, subject to your deductible, will pay the strata back for their deductible.
I gave you all this power, Drew, to decide, but you're not taking it.
Well, you know,
because you don't want those things coming back.
You know, sometimes it'd be a lot easier if we could just make the decisions, but unfortunately, the ones empowered to do that is the elected Strata Council.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. So now, has there been any thought to having a bylaw in, Drew, you might answer this, in a strata unit that requires everybody to have content insurance? Can you say that, you know, for example, I have a mortgage on my house. My mortgage company wants to see my insurance, right?
Yeah, and that's property insurance. They don't really care if you insure your furniture.
Right.
They want to make sure you insure the building. And many strata owners, when they buy, they have to go through that same process. But like in most cases, even standalone homes, the bank doesn't follow up the next year to see if you renewed. I don't think you can at this point require an owner to insure.
It would make so much sense in a strata. We have all these different people living in one building that it would make your life easier if everybody had insurance.
I would think that over time the banks could put such a requirement just because the strata deductibles are going higher, and I've heard that, you know, where the unit owner can't pay, you know, and legal actions taken at some point, you know, if it falls into the mortgage company's responsible because they got mortgage that, you know, gets tacked on, or earthquake deductibles or something like that.
I think it's just a case of the banks not having the capacity to follow up on all of these things in the second year.
I'm using the bank as an example, but could you have a bylaw in your strata?
I don't believe you can at this point.
Oh, okay. No. All right. Just thought I'd ask. The next question is, we're doing some major restoration work in a rain screen of our building. Do we need to arrange separate insurance for this, or is it covered under a current policy? I guess that's having people working on the building. Yes.
I'm going to say in general rain screen, because in rain screen, to me, I would define that to be a larger value in dollars, cents-wise, in the amount of work. Then absolutely separate insurance should be taken out. In the thing is that the Strata Corporation is covered, but there's two parts to it. That extra work that's being worked on in the building is excluded under any property policy. So as a good example would be, you know, if you work on your house and you were doing siding yourself, or you got a contractor, that work's being worked on. If they screw up that work, you can't really go claim insurance that's going to get new siding because the contractor didn't do a proper job. You know, all the homeowner's insurance or the property insurance, they will cover any resulting damage that's caused. But what's being worked on, we're not insuring. We have no. So that's where you got to get separate insurance to cover that rain screen part of it. In this case, would be the whole side of the building. So
you're not just worried about a worker injuring themselves and having a claim. You're talking about, was it done correctly, and then having recourse if 3 years later it all starts to leak again. Can you get insurance for that?
That recourse is I think that falls under more like new home warranty.
Right.
Which in rain screen, I believe that's what would be provided. But this is more so while the work's being done. That siding on a property policy is excluded because it's being worked on.
Oh, I see.
It's something that's
the contractor would be required in most cases to have their own protection against something.
Yeah.
that may
Yeah,
happen.
you'd want to make sure your contractor's carrying proper insurance.
Sure.
And it's very expensive too.
The next question says, our Strata Council has announced they will be voting at the AMG to limit the size of pets in the building. I have 2 dogs that will be violations under the new bylaw, but it's allowed under the current bylaw. If this passes, can they make me get rid of my dogs? I'm not sure why this is under your bailiwick here, Gordon, but
I think Drew decides on whether to get rid of the dogs or not.
Drew doesn't decide. Council decides.
We're going to do a TV show. Drew decides.
In this particular case, no. The coin expression, that person's dogs would be grandfathered.
Sure.
They'd be able to keep those dogs until such time as
they pass away. But you can see years later, they say, I still remember Fluffy used to be red. Now Fluffy's black. What happened?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's happened.
Yeah.
The next question is, my Strata is pursuing a course of action that is in violation of municipal bylaws and regulations. Are the council members still covered under the Strata insurance against a legal challenge arising from this decision? So somebody makes a decision that is maybe inadvertently against municipal rules and regulations. Can they be covered?
No, if they've done it knowingly, no.
If they've done it by
where if they did not, they're not aware of such bylaws and it is a mistake, there would be some coverage for the defense of it. But the correction of these violation by assuming we're talking about some renovation or work that's done, that's not going to be covered. So I would say basically on a director's and officer's liability policy, they would provide some defense for it, where the individual says, I just wasn't aware of this and now I am, we need to rectify it. That's fine.
All right, this is StrataLife, and you're listening to CL650. When we come back, we're going to go back into the mailbag and find out more answers to your questions right here on CL650.
This is Experts on Call on CL650.